Hello and welcome to Limits. Today we're going to talk about piecewise functions and limits. First, we're given the piecewise function f of x, where 3 minus x is part of our function, where x is less than 2, and the other part of the function, x over 2 plus 1, where x is greater than 2. Notice that means there is no function value at 2. And I drew a little red line to kind of show you the boundary between the two functions, where one starts and the other starts. Okay, we're looking at limits, which means we're looking at the value as it approaches a certain point. If there is a sign after the number, if it's negative, it's coming from the left-hand side. If it's positive, it's coming from the right-hand side. So let's look at our first one. It says the limit of f of x as x approaches 2 from the left. So what we're talking about is following down our function, going this direction at 2. What is the y value that it is approaching? Well, it is approaching 1. Now, if we're looking from the right, because it says the limit of f of x as x approaches 2 from the right, we come down our other function, and we're looking where is it going to be when we approach 2. We know it doesn't get to 2 because in neither function 2 doesn't exist. So when it approaches, it's approaching the value of 3 on the y-axis. Okay, does the limit exist? And when we're talking about the limit existing, we're talking about it that it's the same coming from the left and coming from the right. So the limit does not exist, and we use the initials D, N, E. Does not exist. Why? Well, just like I said, because the limit approaching from the left-hand side and the limit approaching from the right-hand side are not going to the same point. So that means the limit does not exist. Okay, let's move on to our next one. We have two functions graphed on our graph. And there's different points and everything on the graph. We're going to look at what happens at certain places. We're going to look at the limits as it approaches from the left and from the right. And we're going to decide what values there are. Okay, our first one is f of negative 4. Well, at f of negative 4, we're talking about right here. Well, we notice as it goes through the function, which would be right here, there's an open circle. So f of negative 4 does not exist. There is no value there. Okay, now, though, we're going to look at the limit as we're approaching negative 4. If we're approaching from the left side, which was what the first one says, it's approaching 2. And then we look at the limit as it's approaching from the right side, that's also 2. So the overall limit, since both the left and the right are approaching the same place, it is 2. Okay, our next one, f of 1. Well, again, we're looking at this point right here, and we see there is a closed circle up at 4, but an open circle down at negative 2. So that means f of 1 is equal to 4. Okay, as we approach positive 1 from the left side, that's going this direction, we're approaching 4. As we're approaching 1 from the positive side, which is coming from here, we're approaching negative 2. So that means since the left and the right limits are not the same, there is not an overall limit. So it does not exist. Okay, the next set of problems, we're looking at f of 6, which again would be this line, and we see we have a point, just a point, but that's where the value of the function f of 6 is 2. Okay, now we look at the function limits as we're coming from the left. We're approaching 5. As we're coming from the right, we're approaching 5. So, since both the left and the right-hand limits are both the same, the overall limit is 5. And that's it for today. That'll get you started in your limits packet. There will be one more lesson on limits. Thank you. Enjoy.